Yeah, we are waiting for the lady, for Dorette, but she will join in a second. I have met her already and I've seen her, so she will come in a second. Yeah, but we will, in order not to lose time, I would say we just start with a very brief introduction. So I'm really thrilled to have this brilliant panel here. A lot of people giving insights in where we stand in the fund industry. Before the others kick off, my name is Carola Rathke. Yes, I'm from YPOG. It's not YPOG, but YPOG. Yeah, we are here, the game changer, so it's our roll-up. And then you will see we're lawyers and tax experts advising this industry ecosystem since 2016. And I'm glad to have very skilled experts here sitting next to me. Alex, you may introduce yourself in 1 or 2 sentences, and then...
Yes, so thanks a lot for having me. It's good to be here. Alex Bechtel, I'm the head of digital strategy at DWS, asset manager in Germany, as you might know, part of Deutsche Bank. And within my team or our team at DWS, we have done a couple of crypto and digital assets projects recently, including the issuance of a crypto ETC, and we are also working on a euro stablecoin, and of course also on the topic of fund tokenization.
Perfect. And we always need Luxembourg. Luxembourg is a very important fund market, as everybody knows, in Europe. So we definitely do need insights from Luxembourg. So, Mouton, Marc, you want to...
Yes, thanks. So I'm working at the law firm Arendt and Medernach, and I'm indeed covering topics like tokenization, in particular in the fund area. Perfect.
And the fund industry from the management company side and as investment firm, Torsten, VanEck, one of the big players in the market.
Thank you very much also for having me. And I'm representing VanEck. So we are a global asset manager, also domiciled in the US, but with offices around Europe, in Germany, and the Netherlands, in Zurich as well. And funds, investment funds, especially ETFs, launched in Ireland and the Netherlands, and we're doing a lot of stuff in the digital asset space. So I think many people remember that Philip interviewed Jan at the beginning of the last conference, and we think all about him. And VanEck does a lot of stuff in the digital assets industry. We have launched digital assets ETNs in Liechtenstein. We are managing also active funds in the US. We're looking, of course, at tokenization of funds, especially ETF solutions. There are different domiciles. And last but not least, we've just launched an NFT, I would call it Web3 and real-world asset tokenization and fragmentation platform in Germany. So a lot of stuff in this area.
Perfect. And if somebody has an overview of what's going on in the fund industry, Till Kreutzmann from the Funds Association, a couple of words, how you...
Yeah, being at BVI, more on the abstract level of fund issues, fund problems, and probably also solutions. And among other things, I'm in charge of our task force on digital assets. And I'd say the recent achievement we had was end of last year, where we introduced or suggested, and the lawmaker adapted this suggestion on the 10% crypto assets quota for retail funds, which came 2 years after, or 3 years after the 20% on special funds. So that's the writing I'm doing towards Berlin to get the fund units more closer to crypto assets.
Perfect. And when we talk about tokenized funds, we always need registries. So that's why Dorette is here from Cashlink. So may you briefly introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Dorette from Cashlink. I'm one of the managing directors together with the founders, Michael and Lars. Cashlink, we are one of the preliminary licensed crypto securities registrars and have, together with Metzler, issued the first crypto fund share at the end of September or October timeframe last year. So very happy to share our practical insights from that point of view.
Perfect. So thank you very much. So I'm really now curious about what's going on in the fund industry. So from my personal perception, I have the feeling that The tokenization of securities made a big step forward over the last 12 months since we have been last time here at the Crypto Assets Conference in 2023. So what's going on the fund side? Are you keeping up with this sector, or what's your perception? What are your plans? What are you currently doing? Maybe Torsten, as a management company, in order to avoid this hen and egg problem, because everybody says the other side has to do something. What are you doing? Are you really looking into tokenization of funds, fund shares, of course, in this context?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that's a great question. We've heard a lot about where the industry stands today already, about everybody doesn't really know how to start because there are too many loose ends. We heard about islands, and some islands hope to be the mainland someday, but right now, I would say, as a global asset manager in Europe, an asset manager with funds in the core jurisdictions. So we had Luxembourg, we moved them to Ireland, but we have Ireland and the Netherlands right now, and a management company in the Netherlands. Tokenization means, to look at what's the efficient solution. And the efficient solution is, of course, to reduce our jurisdictions and to look at, where are our funds right now. If I look at Ireland and the Netherlands, it's quite difficult, so they are quite slow. If I look then, to establish maybe some kind of wrappers, tokenized wrappers, or tokenized, like mirror funds or so, I could look at Germany or Luxembourg, and that's what we do. So we look at all the different jurisdictions. We are looking at the current status, and from today's perspective, I think it's difficult to say what's the best jurisdiction right now. I would say Luxembourg does the best lobbying and is talking the most about funds. Germany, for me, I'm a German lawyer, but I'm dealing with a European business, so I'm not too biased because I've got to deal with my management also in the Netherlands. It looks like Germany is the furthest ahead, just because of the situation with the BaFin and the standard terms for the funds, and also the registrars, the E-Securities Act, and so on. It looks for me that if you want to be one of these islands that hopes to be part of the mainland one day, it could be that establishing like a tokenized fund in Germany might be a solution. But then, there's the second question, maybe if I got time for that. I think it's really, what's the kind of secondary market or the place to trade, to sell these funds, these tokenized funds? And there we have, of course, to deal with the DLT pilot regime on one side, and then, kind of the Luxembourg solution where we talk about like the CSDs, as we all know, lobbying for maybe a different solution. Maybe that's going to be the success at the end, because DLT pilot regime has too small buckets, or is too small, and some people say we don't want to play in the sandbox, and what's the right way for distribution at the end, and that of course has to be considered as well. So the question at the end, what standard are you going to apply for your tokenized funds? How do you build your island? It's quite tricky, but I think you have to start at one point and just build it. Just tokenize a fund. The other questions, well, that's just the start, tokenizing a fund. It's I think, quite simple business. You just need to start looking at smart contracts and understand how to build them, what the efficiencies are you can kind of build through them, and what's the solutions you can put on them, like, paying dividends, inviting people to shareholder meetings, whatever, giving information to them and so on.
So already notice Alex wants to comment something, so go ahead, what's your view?
Yeah, maybe just to bring in the view of another asset manager. So we really tried hard and worked hard on kind of getting into the tokenization game over the last, let's say, 12 to 18 months. But we are not there yet, and there are a couple of reasons for that. And maybe as a disclaimer, we consciously deprioritized the topic of tokenization within DWS compared to the other digital asset projects that we did, meaning crypto and stablecoins. reason number one was it's really tricky to think about a viable business case. You can always say, I'm just doing it because I want to learn, I want to get my foot into the door, I want to have maybe a nice press statement, which is then more a marketing game. But we had a really hard time to find a setup that is scalable and comes with an immediate, and with immediate I would say maybe in the next 2 to 3 years, viable business case. And we had that panel here before, they talked a bit about this 5 to 10 year vision, where we say everyone is on a blockchain and everything becomes super efficient and we save a lot of money when we tokenize stuff. We are definitely not there yet. And we have written 2 research papers and went really into the detail, into our value chain and said where and at which spots and to what extent can tokenization help us here. And it became pretty clear very quickly that even if we try to tokenize something today, we run into certain hurdles very quickly. And just to give you one example, and by the way, Torsten, I agree fully with you on your jurisdictional summary, it's either Luxembourg or Germany at the moment in Europe. We hardly have any funds in Germany. For us, it's Luxembourg. And in Luxembourg, and Marc, you know that better than I do, and maybe you can comment on that later, you usually need something like a transfer agent in order to tokenize a fund, right? Or something like a digital CSD would also be nice, right? We for sure don't have a digital CSD. There are very, very few service providers globally that have digital TA capabilities. We are not working together with any of those, in particular not in Luxembourg. So that already kind of kills that whole idea for us, right? So even though we see from a couple of asset managers now doing things, some is more marketing gig, others have chosen a structure that's not scalable. In my opinion, it's currently, as of now, very, very difficult to find that spot where we can say this is where how we can earn money now, and if the flows are coming, it's a structure that's scalable going forward.
Very interesting. Maybe before we come to the Luxembourg law, because it was mentioned already a couple of times, maybe Dorette, you give us a bit of insights because you have at least proven that it could work. So you just mentioned in your intro already the Metzler use case in order to show that it could work. Maybe you could give the audience some insights that at least it's proven that it could work, and then we come to some challenges and of course then to the fund place in Luxembourg. But what have you done and what have you proven with this MVP?
Yep. Yes, sure. And I mean, what Alex said is totally true. I think it's still in the beginning phase and people need to try out and learn how it works. And depending on, I guess, the knowledge that is already there, it's good that you try it out. But what has happened back in September or October? One part of an already existing fund of Metzler was tokenized, meaning we issued a smart contract here with the how it should be splitted and the amount of tokens, and those tokens were then purchased by Union Investment, who took these newly created fund shares into an existing fund they had, and then people could invest into that fund without having any touch points to the tokens generated by us. And it was a good use case in the sense that people were kind of surprised how easy it was and how easy to use the software and the access to the smart contracts and tokens that was actually possible. And therefore it was a good use case because we could try things out, how does the value chain works, and I think that's what Alex also mentions, like it's not only the registrar and the fund, you have 7 to 8 different players who need to also be able to work with that new technology and process information back and forth and things like that. And I think that's probably the stopping or the making it slow piece of the whole thing, because not everyone along that value chain is already ready to be able to cope with that. And therefore we also included in that structure funds on chain, where the funds, I would say, management platform, let's put it that way. It's a bit tricky with the English, German term, etc. That made it also easier to use for the people who know old processes and think in that older way before then moving everything into the new way. So I think that the most difficult part is that it's very many players along the value chain, but it's good if, you know, like 2 to 3 at least start making their experiences, and then you develop your value chain from there. And then also, I mean, the value chain changes and will change, and I think that's what we are at the beginning of that.
Very interesting, because we show it did work already. So of course, it's not about not having the technology in place. I think we will
or the
talk
regulation.
a bit.
I mean,
and the regulation. We will talk about that in a second. In general, yes. But it comes to Luxembourg. So, Marc, how is the Luxembourg market coping with tokenization? Is it a big topic? Are you positive that we will see tokenized funds in Luxembourg? We talked about players not being ready because we need so many. So where are we? Where do we stand? Because as you're advising this industry, you should have quite a good oversight of what's going on there.
Sure. No, listen, I think generally there's of course a lot of interest. I think as you explained, sometimes it's more about finding the commercially viable model or the one that really is based on investor demand. I think that's probably the key challenge. I would say on the legal and regulatory side, however, there we have good news, because I think in Luxembourg law, it's something that clearly works, tokenization of fund securities, which are typically registered securities. And there we clearly have, let's say, an industry paper of all law firms that support the interpretation that it works, and also the local regulator, the CSF, also has confirmed on a number of occasions that they are perfectly fine with tokenization of fund units, fund registers being kept on DLT technology and so forth. So there's clearly, let's say, clear understanding that it works. There may be 3 attention points to bear in mind. The first one is rather straightforward. I think you need to ensure that you can the fund itself, respectively its management company, can at all times access this register and have an overview of who the investors are. But that's a technical point that's easy to solve. The second one, and you alluded already to it, is that we don't have yet the possibility of full disintermediation. So meaning that you still need to have a transfer agent or registrar, as you would call them in Germany, or that can also be done even by the fund manager itself. But you have someone that needs to be in charge of keeping this register, as being responsible for this register, and they can use the DLT, they can use blockchain technology, but you need to have someone in charge if you wish. So that, I would say, is not a big departure from the traditional model. And finally, the CSF also still insists on the unicity of the register, so you cannot kind of divide the register and appoint 2 or 3 different transfer agents, with one doing it on the blockchain and another one on more traditional technology. So one transfer agent needs to be in charge. They can then subdelegate. I mean, you can find solutions to have a register partly on the blockchain and partly on traditional technology, but then it's more around outsourcings and so forth. And yeah, I would say, again, that there's a lot of interest, a lot of demand, but are there now big funds being launched in this way? Not yet, I would say. But we are seeing, CSF, for instance, approved Funds DLT, a company of Deutsche Börse Group, as a TA that keeps registers on the blockchain. So again, that shows the regulator is on board, but now we need to see a bit in practice, investor demand and really the fund managers deploying that.
Yeah, it comes to the fund industry. So, Tim, what are you seeing in the German fund industry? Is there a lot of interest? I think you're coping with 2 topics. Something is investments in crypto asset. This is one aspect. But when it comes really to the tokenization of fund shares itself, do your members of your association have a lot of interest in that? Is there already kind of exchange with our regulator BaFin? So what's your take on this?
Yes, the interest is right there. I get questions on what's the BaFin thinking regularly, and I'm engaging with BaFin. We, as Torsten said, developed a draft for our Musteranlagebedingungen, templates for fund rules, stating how this might work. One issue that just comes up when you think about in practical terms is how you do a transformation for fund shares, meaning also in connection with the business case. And today you can always launch a new fund for fund shares, even like a single share as a tokenized share. But what's not working currently is that you have an existing share, paper-based deed, and you want to transform it into a DLT-based token, fund token. And the reason the lawmaker says that's not allowed is because it might be dangerous for the investor for whatever reason. But here we see in the medium term, if you want to develop a business case, and we're talking about the value chain, you don't want to have two ecosystems in parallel forever. At one point, you want to put on the switch and change the traditional world into the crypto world. Otherwise, you run paper-based deeds indefinitely. That doesn't make any sense. But in order to do so, you need the legal opportunity in the law to transform your existing shares, regardless of it's in Luxembourg or in Germany, that you tokenize the whole ecosystem. And here we need assistance from the lawmaker again. And this is something that's not crucial tomorrow and not next year, but in a few years, when you really want to scale this opportunity, that's important. And here, I think we have to think 3 or 5 years ahead. What's the future business case when you actually want to earn money with this tokenization? Yeah?
I think it's a good opportunity that BaFin currently learns when it comes to the DLT pilot regime. One of you mentioned it already, because this could be, and I will discuss it with you in a second, this kind of secondary marketplace. It has a lot of flaws in there, and these thresholds, Torsten, you mentioned, is one of the big problems. I think BaFin is currently arguing for it in the sense of they have seen the point. There are also some other issues with the DLT pilot regime, but it would be actually a good sandbox to test if this could be an ecosystem that works for funds, because it is DLT pilot regime for you that doesn't, who don't know it. It's an trading system, normally an MTF. There are 3 different categories, but it is an MTF. It could be a trading and settlement system where you really trade DLT-based financial instruments on an MTF platform. So it would be a secondary market. Everybody was looking for it and saying, well, currently we have the problem, we can issue funds, but how can we really trade them on an ongoing basis? And the pilot regime should have been a solution. The appetite to dive into that pilot regime was a bit reduced to the threshold. So there are reduced volumes you can only trade. So one of the topics, because you mentioned it, was the topic, can we then split the global deed into this kind of issue that only a small portion of a security issuance will go on the DLT pilot system to stay under thresholds, and the rest will be traded on normal trading venues. So exactly your point is currently discussed with BaFin when it comes to the DLT pilot regime. Takes a bit of time, but I'm confident that this might be solved. Torsten, you had an idea, I noticed.
No, I just think that, you know, we also heard this already today, that at the end you want to have a product that is as efficient as possible. And I don't know, it's a digital assets conference, it's not an asset management conference. Many people don't maybe even know what's an ETF, but it's an exchange-traded fund where you invest in a very efficient way in securities, and that's highly regulated. It's a UCITS regime. It's you know, it's got like at least 25 years or more of experience, and you know, it's a very mature system already. And if you put the tokenization on top of it, it's just I would say it's a reduced layer if you apply all of the policies and procedures and governance of a global asset manager. It's just about to find a way to to kind of make this tokenized ETF as efficient for the investor as possible. And this also means to save as much money as possible. So you have to look at the ETF. If it's tokenized, what do you need in the infrastructure? And if you just listen to the presentation we had before this one, if you don't need anybody else in between the ETF, nowadays you have got the investment manager, the index provider, the administrator, the custodian, you have got the TA, then the broker, the AP, the market maker, and everybody earns some money. And if at the end the tokenized ETFs doesn't need like 2, 3, 4 of these players anymore, of course that's the most efficient way for the investor to invest. And I invest for my kids only in ETFs because that's the cheapest way and that's the most efficient way, and it's very successful. So I try to find the version of the ETF that is, you know, if it's tokenized, the most efficient one. And I think that we need to do this. We need to tokenize an ETF. And then we can't know right now how it's going to look like in 10 years. We didn't know how the ETF looks like 10 years ago when we started the first ETFs, or 15 years. So we will tokenize an ETF and then see how it develops, and then maybe get rid of one or the other player one by one and not all at the same time. It's going to develop somehow. But yeah, as I said, I think, and I don't like this preliminary license thing. I think there is a license in place for
I just wanted to be correct, not that.
Yeah, it's correct, of course.
Stating me.
There's kind of a probation period, but you know, I just always say there is, you know, a regime in Germany with the E-Securities Act. We have the registrar, a licensed registrar by BaFin. It's a, you know, I don't even know what this means, this probation period, but at the end, it's everybody can lose a license if you don't do your business properly. But I think, you know, especially as an asset manager in our size, you have to try something as long as you don't risk any assets or money of your clients, and just you do some kind of trial and build your little island. I think that's the right way. You got to learn. And also your operations teams, all the teams, they need to learn. They need to understand what's a smart contract, how does it, you know, kind of translate into the white paper and all this stuff. Everybody in the organization has got to learn this. And only if you start early, I think the organization will be mature and ready for this at some point.
Yes, maybe I can, from the practical side, add on that, and it's very definitely 100% true what you said. It's good that the different departments learn. I mean, we wrote down a very specific run book for every person, not we ourselves, but together, you know, like the questions asked from a compliance department, from the operations department, from the paying agent, like from, you know, everything. We wrote it down specifically and said, like, you do this then, you do this then, so that everyone knew what was happening. And I think it's, as you said, like, people need to learn how that works, and then they realize it's actually quite easy. And then, you know, take it from there and scale it up, and not raise only concerns like what could happen in 5 years or 10 years, and how does it, you know, what will come. And as you also said, it's not only the cost efficiency point, it's also speed, and it's a new way of distribution channels that are possible from that. Like tokenized ETFs can be purchased by people who have, you know, crypto wallets, crypto trading platform access, and not a regular depot. So you have possibilities of, yeah, reaching totally different people that you have not reached before, because they don't want to have the old traditional world depot bank. Now I'm missing the word, sorry. So also at the beginning, I know, but I mean, that's where this is all heading at some point, that you can, yeah, distribute via different channels that are not possible at the moment, and therefore also make new business models possible that are not existent at the moment.
Perfect. Alex wants to say something.
Yeah, so I mean, I feel a bit like the party pooper, and I'm way less skeptical actually as it might seem here, but I just wanted to bring in maybe a bit of the other side of the coin of two arguments we've just heard. I mean, as said, 10 years is a very long time, right? And we might all agree that in 10 years everything is great, but I mean, I might be dead in 10 years, so I'm way more
Hopefully
interested
not.
in what happens in 1 or 2 years. That's what I'm interested in. And I mean, I don't have a good answer to that question, but I feel like we're not debating this question hard enough, kind of what's the immediate business? Because how can I go to my CEO tomorrow, give him kind of a 1 or 2 pager and convince him that he should give me probably a solid 7-figure amount of money to get this going. And I'm not talking again about a press release, because I can have that cheaper and do kind of a POC, but kind of we want to make progress as an industry as a whole, so we need scalable solutions. And I haven't found that case yet, at least. And I think that's kind of, there are usually 2 reasons why I would tokenize a fund, right? One is the whole efficiency thing. This is what we have mainly talked about. And Dorothy brought in a very interesting second point, which it's not only about cost saving and efficiency, it might also be about revenue increasing, or at least revenue retaining, meaning maybe I can access new client groups by bringing my fund onto a new ecosystem and selling it to people that are not even considering buying funds via, let's say, traditional technology. And we have also taken a look at that. And unfortunately, there are almost none token native distribution channels that are able or allowed to list MiFID instruments, right? So it would be great if we could list our, let's say, Xtrackers MSCI World on Coinbase and Kraken and reach all these, let's say, younger clients, but none of these exchanges have actually the required license in order to list these tokens. So we ended up finding maybe less than a handful, let's say, distribution channels where this would be possible, because all the others, like the Scalable Capital, the Trade Republics, they already list our traditional MSC, Xtrackers MSCI Worlds. And I can't, if I tokenize the MSCI World and sell it via Trade Republic, it's not going to be cheaper or better or faster. It's actually going to be more expensive in the beginning, so I can't start with them, right? So that would actually be cool, right? If Coinbase and Kraken and all those get the necessary licenses and I could sell my funds through these channels, that might actually be a real booster for the whole story.
And I think it's the question of like when and not that, to be honest. Because I mean, we also did a tokenized ETF via Nuri. Maybe not the best example because it doesn't exist anymore, but still, like Nuri clients were able to invest into tokenized ETFs and have that on their Nuri account. So already a new distribution channel.
Yeah, and I think it's not too controversial, because I think so far my senior management is also listening. We did decide to tokenize the fund so far, but I just want to say that it might make sense to do it rather earlier than later, especially for a smaller organization that hasn't this kind of resources like like a Deutsche Bank or DWS, and it makes a lot of sense to start and learn, and that what we are doing anyway right now. And I think it's a must for an asset manager to do some pilot projects in order to learn, because you can't put your clients' money into anything where you are not 100% comfortable. That's for sure. That everybody agrees, I think.
Maybe Tim, would be interesting. I should ask the question to Alex, because he said he deprioritized the project and kind of emphasized more on the digital euro side. But nevertheless, when you talk with your members about tokenized funds, is the payment side, because delivery versus payment is something where smart contract driven, you could have a lot of advantages, at least when it comes to settlement, etc. Not necessarily that you disintermediate, so you do need the same players, but at least there is some automation. So are your members, when they think about the tokenization of funds, also thinking about using digital payment methods, so the tokenized euro or whatever the denomination is in the end? Or is it just on the issuance side that they're interested in the tokenization piece?
Yeah, when we talk about DLT and efficiency, it's always the question on the distribution and the question who's paying what kind of money. And here we come to the simple question at the end: is the bank account eligible for the stable coin of Deutsche Bank or any other, or is it an asset? Is it for investments, or is it a bank account asset? We are not there yet. That is the question of a practical experience we have to tackle with BaFin once we are there. I think in general, there are many steps to take. A German tendency is that the glass is always half empty. I think 3 years ahead, when we talked about the DLT pilot regime in Brussels, 3 years ago, and they're not all DLT experts, and there are not many pilot regimes in EU law. Yeah, so what we actually achieved, we start with very small thresholds, no fund shares at all, and here we have the fund shares. We more than doubled the thresholds. So there's actually a willingness of the lawmaker to provide us with the toolkit to enable us to try and fail or to succeed. And the question of the payment, ECB is not the quickest maybe, but very thoroughly assesses the possibilities. I think it takes a bit of time. So it's more of a marathon than a short run. However, as I said, you can try. Is it a first mover advantage or a first mover disadvantage to try and fail? But if you miss the train, it's always, it was everything. BMW had an electric car more than 10 years ago. Where is what's the name of the small egg-shaped thing, yeah? Why is Tesla working? Not, matter of timing, yeah? I think that's, nobody can foresee what's happening in 10 years, or is it in 5 years, and what is the world outside of Europe doing also. I think that's one question in terms of value chain. If other jurisdictions move quicker, is it pushing our industry, or are we comfortable being ahead of the curve right now? But we should not lean back and say, okay, well, we are prepared for what event? Yeah? I suggest we should start and try.
Perfect. I already see the countdown here, unfortunately, because I could talk for an hour with this great panel about these issues. Maybe one last sentence from you, Marc, from the Luxembourg side. Do you think that the intermediaries you still need will work on getting the technology ready in order to make it easier for Alex to also go back to his CEO? So what's your view?
Well, yeah, I think in Luxembourg we are really trying to build a framework that works for these transactions. I think we look also at the Swiss example. We try to really adapt our civil law to make sure, if you transfer token, you also transfer property and so forth. But again, that will not be the driver, the commercial driver in the end. And I think, as you say, I also look with interest at the initiatives of the ECB. We now launch these trials that you can indeed settle the transactions with central bank money. That's not so much in the fund area, that's more in the, I would say, debt securities kind of area. But I think, if things come together, maybe we also reach these kind of commercially viable use cases. Yeah.
Perfect. Normally I would have asked for a last thought, but I already get the red countdown, so I will finish this great panel here. So thank you very much for giving your insights. Would have great to discuss more, as it's a very good topic, I think. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.